Hi, my name is Nicolette Winter, and I am a trainer with LuLaRoe. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about positioning yourself as a community asset, and I hope this will help you with your business. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick here so you can see what's going on here. One second. There we go. Okay. So for this presentation, this is called Positioning Yourself as a Community Asset. And my name again is Nicolette Winter, and I want to talk to you a little bit about my approach to business. My approach to business is that I came from a nonprofit background, and my mantra really is never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. This is a quote by Margaret Mead. This is something that's been with me throughout my entire career. Prior to LuLaRoe, I had, for the most part, a lengthy nonprofit sector career. And in that career, I was able to help hundreds of nonprofit organizations and thousands of volunteers in a 7-county radius. Also, I had statewide and national partnerships that I worked within. And so taking that experience and shifting it into LuLaRoe, I always joke that you can take the girl out of the nonprofit, but you can't take the nonprofit out of the girl. And so that's really going to come into play later on in this presentation. I'm really focused on building mutually beneficial relationships between myself and anyone that I'm serving in the community at large. That's something that I learned back in the day when I got my PR degree. That's what public relations really is about, is building mutually beneficial relationships between yourself as the PR practitioner and the publics that you serve. And so I've carried that with me as well throughout my entire career. I'm really focused on my long game versus my short game. There are many things I could do to make a buck really fast. That's not important to me. What's important to me is having a successful, healthy business that's going to be here for the long term. I really want to make people feel good and have fun as well. That is so important to me. And I'm always about practicality. I am not your girl who will be doing styling tips on YouTube and things like that. I couldn't tell you how to knot certain things a certain way. It's just not my niche. There are plenty of other people who do that really well. I do a lot of other things very differently. And well, but not the styling stuff. So I'm all about practicality. It's always about making it easy. And my biggest goal in my career has been to go from, I used to ask people for money all the time and ask them to volunteer. And now I want to be the check writer, the one who's handing out the money. And that's a really big shift in how I would approach my business. And so I really want to, it's exciting to really hit that transition. So let me talk really quickly about some of my personal affiliations. And this is important because you want to know what your personal affiliations are. I personally am a member of a women's networking group called LEAD, and it's local businesswomen in my small town. I'm also a board member for a nonprofit organization called Project Believe. It helps kids in group homes and mental health facilities. Usually they're older kids, teens primarily. And so we give them back to school supplies, we give them Christmas items, and then Valentine's each year. So I'm also a mom and a wife. My kids are involved in Cub Scouts, hockey, Destination Imagination, which I still don't quite understand. It's really intense. And my husband is a Cub Scout leader, and he is also the hockey coach. I'm also the nonprofit jobs group administrator for Miami Valley Nonprofit Jobs. That's something I founded years ago, and I continue that because it really helps me have great connections in the community. I'm a past nonprofit sector leader, so I have a lot of connections from that. It's really weird how that kind of comes back into play sometimes. I'm also a member of my local Chamber of Commerce. In the past, before this season of my life, I've been a member of Young Professionals Networks. I've helped start them. I've been a leader within them. I've been involved with statewide and national professional organizations, moms groups, all sorts of different activities. And so that really is important to have a wide circle that you're working within, because this business is all about networking. And while networking isn't my primary concern when I'm in some of these groups, it does come into play and it comes in handy. All right, so let's talk about getting to know your community. This is something that you'll want to do if you want to increase your business and really position yourself as someone who is an asset within the community, not someone taking from the community, but someone really giving back in the community. So there's one way you can do this. The first way you can do this is the scholarly approach. And the scholarly approach kind of goes back to my nonprofit days. One of the things I used to have to do is write grants, and I'd have to create programming and really pitch my program to potential funders. And one thing that you need to do is you need to know your community really, really well, because each community, even if they're next door neighbors, behave very differently. So important to know your community super well. And so I really kind of borrowed from something called asset-based community development. It's going to sound like a big scary term. It's not that scary. Really, all it means is making sure that you know what are the strengths in your community? What's it doing really well? And is there a way to bring all those strengths together, the things that are cool in your community, the things that are working, bring them together and use them to make your community a much better place? That's asset-based community development in a nutshell. It sounds like this big scholarly thing, but really, if you just use that phrase at a party, you'll sound super smart, but it's really not that intense. So I'm going to use that kind of philosophy in getting to know my community. And the way I would do that is I would do something called asset mapping. Again, sounds intense. It's really not intense. Asset mapping is all about defining, first of all, if you're going to do an asset map, you could do a physical map. I have a map back here. This is not for that. That's something else. But you could do a map of your community. What I like to do is the steps in asset mapping, and then I don't actually put them on a map, if that makes any sense at all. It might make sense for you to do a map. I don't do that. So here are the steps you would follow in creating a map if you would like to do that. But also, they'll just help you get to know your community really well. So the first thing you need to know is you need to know, what are your community's boundaries? Are you talking, when you talk about I want to get out in the community, what does that mean? Does that mean you want to get to know your town, your county, your region? I live in the greater Dayton area. I live in a different county than Dayton, Ohio. And the town I live in is Tip City, Ohio. So if I want to talk about my community here, I just moved to Tip City from a neighboring town in the same county last year. I've been starting out with getting to know Tip City. Now I'm at the stage where I really want to get to know Miami County. Now, as I grow my business, my goal is to eventually be part of the greater Miami Valley, which is part of the Dayton, Ohio region. So you really want to know what you're talking about when you're talking about what is your community. You want to get out in the community, what does that mean to you? So define your community boundaries. And then you want to decide, do you want to do this project all by yourself, or are there other retailers in your area who might be able to partner with you that you would be interested in partnering with? Now, if you want to partner with another LuLaRoe retailer, you can absolutely do that. I have not done that. That's not something that I'm interested in at this point on this particular project. We partner in other ways, but this isn't something I've partnered with them on. However, if I'm a smaller retailer and I'm looking to partner with or I'm looking to do a big community, figure out what's going on in the community, it might be helpful for me to actually talk with some other retailers locally. And so you could do this as a small group if you would like to. So you just have to decide, am I doing this on my own? Am I doing it with other retailers? There's no right or wrong answer. Either way is totally fine. The next thing you want to do is you want to decide what type of assets you'll include. So when I'm looking at my business, some of the things I do is I say, I really want to sell Cassie skirts. I really need to sell a lot more Cassies, or I really need to sell a lot more Irmas or kids' clothes. Decide what it is you're trying to grow your business with, and maybe you're like, I just need to do it all, and that's fine. What I would recommend in that case is, first of all, decide what you want to sell more of, and we'll stick with one style to start with. Let's talk about Cassie skirts. If I want to sell more Cassie skirts, who wears Cassie skirts? That's the first thing I need to be asking myself. Professional women. Professional women is a no-brainer when it comes to Cassie skirts, right? They're really stretchy, they're really soft, they don't wrinkle so much, so they're really comfortable. They're like the best pencil skirt, especially to throw a blazer on with. So where would I find professional women? I'd find them in women's networking groups. I would find them in professional associations. I might find them in the Chamber of Commerce. Start making a list of places where you might find these types of women. And those organizations, when you say, okay, where would I find them? Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so if I know I need to go to a Chamber of Commerce and maybe go to some of their events, in my community boundaries I've outlined, let's say I'm doing the county for me, how many chambers of commerce are there? Let's identify them. Well, I know there's Tip City. I'm a member of that one. There's also Troy and Piqua, and sometimes there's a Covington one. So it kind of goes back and forth. So there's multiple chambers of commerce in my actual county. So now I'm going to list those out so I know exactly which ones there are. So if I'm working within one of them already, but I'm not really working with the other three, there are 3 opportunities, and those are all 4 different assets I could be working with. Does that make sense? I hope so. So Do that again with, okay, we said professional organizations. List out all the professional organizations in your community. You might have to do some research to find this. You might have to ask people. Pick up the phone. Don't just email people. Don't just Google. Actually pick up the phone and say, where would I go to find these things? Make a big list. Young professionals groups would be great too. So make a big list. That's creating a list of assets that you know you need to include, right? Okay, and now you're already going through and actually pulling the physical assets out and putting them on a list. That's awesome. That's exactly what you need to do. Now let's do this with IRMAs. Who wears IRMAs? Women who want to be comfortable, right? So, and women of all ages. You want to remember that IRMA is one of those great pieces that goes across many ages. So moms groups are great, but so are senior groups, that like active senior groups. You can make a huge list that way as well. So what you need to do is you need to make a big list of what types of assets you're going to include and actually start making that list of assets that are out there. There's all these different crowds out there. I know there's only one mall in my entire county. So that's an asset I would list. I'm not necessarily going to go hang out at the mall, but I know it's there. I know that there are certain things in my community that are there. You might also go through and we'll talk about how to treat your community as though you're a tourist in a second. You'll come up with some other ideas from that too. So then go ahead and list the assets for each group. So you're going to list out for professional women, chambers of commerce, women's networking groups, young professionals organizations, and so forth. You're going to list those out and list out the specific ones. You can list the title of it, chambers, and then list out the 4 chambers of commerce, the actual physical names, and you can get their contact info. Create your list that way. Then you might also come up with a list of names of people. There's always someone in your community who is really a mover and shaker that you need to be affiliated with. They may not buy your product, and that's okay. They don't have to buy it. But maybe there's someone you need to network with, and they might be a good community partner to collaborate with on different things, or they might connect you to different people. This is someone you really want to be around. Go ahead and jot those names down too on your list because they have value. They may not fit easily into a bucket somewhere else, but they go on your list. And lastly, go ahead, if you want to, you can put them on a map. I don't do that step, but you're welcome to if that's helpful to you. And maybe in my situation, if I look at Tip City, I might have a Tip City list, and then I might have a Miami County-wide list. So if that helps. Let's talk about how to also find out what else is going on in your community. The more fun way to do this is to be a tourist in your own town. And to do that, you really need to have a good list of what are the attractions in your community. And I'm going to challenge you to take a step backwards and don't go with just the obvious ones. Think for a second. I always forget in Miami County that we have this thing called Idle Hour Ranch, which is a private zoo. I forget about it all the time. There's no reason for me to forget. I just have never gone there. But it's a great asset that I should be tapping into, right? I should be somehow looking for reasons to go and hang out with them. So list out all of the attractions in your community, the traditional ones, the non-traditional ones. We have a bookstore in our town that is haunted. It's supposed to be haunted, and it's been featured on a few TV shows. Haunted Browse a While Books would be a great one for me to list on this, and it's a non-traditional one that I need to put on there. Local events. What are all the events in your area? We have the Strawberry Festival here. We have a Mum Festival. We have all sorts of great events that are in the area. The Air Force Marathon is not my county, but it's just down the road from me. That's another one I might want to list. Unique businesses. This is, again, something else that you'll want to look at. Again, I mentioned Haunted Browse a While Books. There's also, I've partnered with cupcake shops in the past. I've partnered with fair trade groups, all sorts of different groups. So make a big list of really unique and fun businesses, people who are really just fun to work with. Recreational activities. What is there in your area? We have a great bike path. We have some fantastic parks. We have awesome swimming pools. So all of these things are other resources that I want to put down on my list. Best eats. Now, this is my area of expertise. If you ever need to know where to go in Tip City, Ohio, or Miami County, Ohio, if you ever need a place to go eat, let me know and I'll hook you up. So, but know where the great places to go are. And then also, this is going to sound silly, but know the local lore. This is going to sound really funny for a second. I promise you, this is a true story. In Ohio, the oldest football rivalry in the state is in my county. It's in Troy and Piqua. Troy is the county seat. It's where I used to live about 1.5 years ago. And then Piqua is just up the road. They do not get along traditionally. Now, I'm not from this county originally. So when I moved here years ago and heard this, I said, oh, this is crazy. Nobody cannot get along really well. But it's really true sometimes. I've seen it come out in partnerships and all these odd places. But here's the local lore that really made it sink in for me. Years ago, we had the county seat was selected as Troy, and Piqua wanted to be the county seat but wasn't chosen. They had built a famous hotel in Piqua. Now, Troy used the same architect to build the courthouse in Troy, and it was a big battle. They did not like each other. Remember, this is a big deal. So in Ohio, all of the courthouses have a little person on top of the courthouse. And generally, that person will face directionally in towards Columbus, the center of the state, where our state capital is. And in Miami County, that's not the case. They actually took the little person on the top of the courthouse and turned it so its posterior faces Piqua. This is a real thing. It's been in the newspaper. But it really made it sink in for me that this is not a game, that people really don't necessarily get along sometimes between the two communities if they're longtime residents of those communities. Now, I'm not picking on Troy and Piqua. This is just some local lore I wanted to share with you. But the reason I'm telling you this is if I'm hosting an event in Troy, it's entirely possible that some Piqua residents are not going to want to come to the Troy event. So I might need to do a Piqua event too, and vice versa. So something to share with you guys. All right, let's go ahead and talk about, you could do an activity. This is where I would encourage you to go ahead and identify potential partners and opportunities within your own community. Great opportunity to do that. All right, so here's what you do. You've made all of your lists. Now it's time to put those lists to work. I'm going to encourage you to pick up the phone. Don't email. People will ignore emails. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, go to places, and actually physically talk to people. That is networking 101. You've got to be able to do that. Join groups. Look for affinity groups. Again, I said I was in a mom's group. That's a really good group to join if you need something where you're just meeting people. Offer to help with things. Volunteer for activities. Volunteer for big events. If you know that this person over here is someone you really want to network with, find out where they're volunteering and go offer to volunteer there too. Maybe it'll help you naturally create a relationship with that person. But the biggest thing is you have to ask to be involved. Don't wait to be asked. Go ahead and ask yourself. Sometimes you'll get a no, but a lot of times you'll get a yes. Host fundraisers. That's a great way to get connected with different areas of the community. I'm going to tell you a little secret from a nonprofit girl. Fundraisers are fantastic because you get to meet volunteers who may or may not have a lot of money to spend, but man, they are great advocates and their heart is with you. If you're supporting their favorite charity, man, they're going to tell everybody about you and they're going to love you. Nonprofit staff, they don't have a lot of cash. We didn't make a lot of money in my business in my past career. So, but I needed clothing that could go with me from working in the homeless shelter projects during the morning, going to a donor meeting at night. It needed to be stretchy, comfortable, and go all day without getting too wrinkly. And I'm plus size, so that's really hard to find, and all for a great price. Now, who do you know who sells clothes like that? Probably you. So you're a great asset to them. So that's a great way to network with a potential group of customers out there for you. Also, donors. Donors are affiliated with nonprofit organizations and fundraisers, and they're going to spend money with you. Also, offer to be a convener. Whenever there's something going on in the community, always offer to be a neutral place where you say, hey, let's talk this through. Let's figure this out. Be solution oriented. Bring people together. Try not to be divisive in anything you're doing, but try to bring people together to come together around a common cause and to make things better. It's a really good approach to do anything with. A few random tips. Know who's who in town. You've got to know who's who. Don't ever lead with a sales pitch. I don't join a mom's group and say, hey, I sell LuLaRoe. You should all buy it. No, I just naturally wear my LuLaRoe, and if someone asks me about it, I'll say, oh, thanks, I actually sell this. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And I let the conversation evolve naturally. Sometimes we talk about my business. Sometimes we don't, and we talk about their kids. It's okay. It's all about building relationships. Long-term relationships will do your business much more good than a fast transactional sale. Always share your skills and expertise. One thing that we as LuLaRoe retailers know how to do really well is we know how to navigate Facebook. We know how to make graphics really well. This is something that a lot of nonprofits and a lot of school groups and other places need. And so if you're in the PTO meeting and they're saying, who can make a graphic to do this? I can. I'd be happy to help. Offer to share that skills and expertise. Don't think of just how to get a sale and just how to get a fundraiser. When you share those skills and expertise, people will look at you as someone who is valuable in the group, and then they'll start coming to you naturally. There's trust being built. Share your resources. I get a lot of boxes. Silly thing, it sounds like, but I offer free boxes to anybody who needs them, especially when they're moving or anything. Porch pickup, I posted in the rummage sale page on Facebook. Porch pickup, come get them. My Lula bins are right next to it. They see what I do. And so naturally, if they're ever looking for clothing, they're going to get to know that I have that available and I'm happy to help them. And they know by the number of boxes I get that I get a lot of good stuff. So, and our boxes are great, and why not recycle them naturally, right? Know the community's politics. I know in my community, it's a little bit more conservative. I'm not necessarily as conservative as a person. I'm more middle of the road. My husband's a little bit more liberal. So I'm not going to go and put liberal signs in my yard. And I know this really sounds strange politically, but you don't want to be divisive again. It goes back to being a convener. So know your community, know the politics. In our community, the one thing I have kind of become a little bit more outspoken about is the schools. I'm all about our schools, and I don't think that's something that should be so divisive. So look at your community's politics and play carefully in that arena if you're going to play at all, but just be careful. Stay neutral on things. I have feelings about, national leaders as well. I try not to share too many of those online. I'm sure some people pick up on it, but I never try to overtly say this person is terrible or this person is great. So just something to think about. And always partner strategically. If you have 5 animal serving organizations in your area and they all ask for fundraisers, which one do you think is going to get you the best connections? Which one do you think is going to support you the most? Be strategic in what you're doing. There's no problem with doing that. All right, so let's talk about some success stories quickly, partnerships that have worked for me in the past. I work with a family abuse shelter in Miami County, and I've done 2 different projects with them most recently. I've done a lot of them, and I'm going to do some more. But one of them was a trade and trade up event. My customers were allowed to bring me gently used LuLaRoe, and in exchange for each piece, they were given a coupon for a certain percentage off of one new piece out of my boutique. So you have to be careful how you word that. You want to stay within MAP, obviously, but that is a great way to collect great donations for a local charity and then drop them off. And, I coordinated in advance. I talked with them in advance, and we kind of had a plan too. That's really important because sometimes organizations don't want clothing donated. Even when the family abuse shelter is not able to take other clothing donations, they generally will take mine because they know the LuLaRoe is special and their women love it. I've actually had former staff people there tell me it's a treat when the women get LuLaRoe, and they know it's something special and they really love it. So I did that at Christmas time. And then recently we did a thing where every maxi skirt we sold, we went ahead and donated a package of maxi pads. And we did it for a month. And the goal was if we sold 25 maxi skirts in the month, my husband had to go live and purchase them at Walmart with me. So now we didn't go live in Walmart. It's a little weird doing that, but we did do it outside. And we took pictures of him here getting all the maxi pads. He had so much fun with that. I'm sure you can imagine. He's a good sport, but it's not his favorite thing. Also, by being in the women's networking group that I'm in, LEAD, I was invited to be on the magazine on the cover of a magazine that just started up this year in January. There's a local magazine that started up just for our community, and they interview one family every month, and they do a story on them. And we actually were chosen to be the first ones we were asked, and it's all because I was in the women's networking group. So being in those groups can be super valuable. You're making connections. It's how I met my realtor. It's how I actually moved to this community. So it's really important that you be in groups like that. I also have done things, Drop Your Drawers campaign, where we collect new packages of underwear for Project Believe, the group with which I'm a member of the board. And I invited my customers, if you drop off a package of new underwear, I'll give you a little gift at checkout. Well, I give them a $5 off. Whatever they're buying that day. And so they're doing a little good. I'm making some sales, but they're doing good by dropping off new underwear that I can take to a charity, and the charity loves it. And Drop Your Drawers just sounds like so much fun. Who doesn't want to be a part of that, right? All right, and then lastly, I have 2 other ones that are really important. For Project Believe, again, we did a huge donation. They do, like I said, back to school supply drives. I did a Super Saturday in March this past year. And in March for Super Saturday, I invited other retailers to bring in donations of school supplies, which would all be donated to Project Believe. When we did that, we also charged for the Super Saturday, as you normally would. There was an overage in the budget because it's really tricky to balance that budget sometimes. And you obviously don't want to be under the amount you need to pay for the facility, the food, all those things. So what we did is we ended up having an overage of funds, and those funds ended up being $500, and they were donated to Project Believe. And here you can see a picture where we got to give the check to Project Believe. And then lastly, we did another project recently where more than 20 local LuLaRoe retailers came together, and we brought in over 5,000 pieces of brand new LuLaRoe and donated it at a local high school. The reason we did this is because on Memorial Day of this year, the Dayton region was struck by 15 different tornadoes. Nearly 1,000 homes in a 10-county area were completely decimated. They're pretty much not livable. And then you've got almost, I would say probably another 1,000 to 2,000 more that are really, they had some level of damage. And so the community really struggled with this. What we did is we worked with the First Heavy Metal Church of Christ in Northridge, Ohio, which is one of the suburbs of Dayton. That was a community that was really ravaged by tornadoes. It went straight through the middle. It's just decimated certain areas. We worked with this church. They work with other churches to do a clothing bank at Northridge High School. Unfortunately, they can't get into their clothing bank right now. The building was knocked off its foundation during the tornado, and so they can't get in safely into their building to keep giving people clothes when they most need these clothes. Now, normally I would never recommend anybody do a clothing donation for disaster relief. That's really something you generally don't do. I know that from my nonprofit background. However, I worked with the church ahead of time and made sure this was a donation they wanted and needed, and because the clothing was brand new, and we partnered with them on it, they did want the donation. And so what we did is we got together, we pulled together over 20 people, put together, inventory off of their racks that they no longer wanted, and they donated it. And then a lot of us, not all of us were able to go, but a lot of us went together to the high school and distributed the items. And anything that wasn't distributed stayed with the organization so they could continue giving out those clothes as needed for the months to come. So it was a really great project. We got the media out there. It was a lot of fun. And as a result of that, LuLaRoe is now making a huge donation into another neighboring community of about 5,000 pieces of clothes. So that's awesome. And we're going to work with that community again to do something similar. So really cool. Just spurred all the good giving. So those are a few ideas about how you might position yourself as a community asset. I'm going to challenge you. An online business is so valuable. It's awesome. But get out in your community. You're missing out on opportunities if you're not out in your community. And this is a really good way to make sure that your business has some sustainability. It's going to keep you there for the long term. People are going to value you. They're going to respect you. And they're going to think of you first when they have any sort of clothing needs or other needs in general. So anyways, I hope this has been very helpful. If you need to reach me, look me up, Nicolette Witter on Facebook. Talk to you later. Thanks.